Got the little dog scratching at the door, wanting to get inside. Hmm. Anyways, while I run through this, we're on with Mike Walker today. He's calling us from California, and he's going to tell us about some experience he had and, what he thinks about it. What he thinks every day. Well, anyways, Betsy usually does this, but welcome to the Wow Pod. I'm Jared. Betsy isn't in right now. This is an earlier show, and she had to work a little late today, so she wasn't able to make it. But we may be able to go back on again here in a couple, 2, 3 more hours, and if she can make it out of there in time. But anyways, welcome, and let's welcome Mike Walker, and let's dive right into it. Let's have him just kind of lay out the situation that happened to him and tell us the story. Mike, how you doing?
Good. Thanks a lot, Jared. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my experience.
Oh, we're happy to. Hey, thank you for sharing it. But so
So,
lay it out.
yeah,
How old was you?
okay.
Where was you at?
All right. Well, I was 12 years old. This happened in South Hayward, California in 1985. I was living on East 11th Street at 28063, which was directly across the street from 28080, which was actually my childhood home at one point. But we ended up having to sell that house, and the Lopez family across the street actually had taken us in. But I do consider that my childhood neighborhood. It was a few blocks of East 10th, East 11th, and East 12th Street. And there was quite a few family members that I had that lived in that neighborhood. And even though we lived all over the Bay Area and sometimes out of state, we seemed to always come back to this little particular neighborhood. And I got to spend most of my time in that school system in that area. So this night, it was a summer night. I was 12 years old. It had just gotten dark, and I remember walking out the house of the Lopez family. I remember opening the screen door and just walking out into the middle of the street, and I actually met up with my friend Chano. It wasn't anything planned. Uh, Actually, reflecting on it now, it was just kind of weird. We just both were under the understanding that it was time to go for a walk around the block. I don't think it was even spoke about. I just remember walking into the middle of the street and meeting up with Chano, and we just started kind of walking around the block. And just as we began walking, I was, like I said, it had just gotten dark. The clouds were still out, and they were still pretty bright white. And the clouds were pretty low that night, so they appeared to be moving pretty quick. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So all in all, it was a pretty night. And the sky had already captured my attention before we even made our first little turn around the block. So I'm kind of looking up in the sky, and I'm noticing the pretty clouds and how they're moving and how bright they are. And all of a sudden, a section of these clouds began to slowly swirl, not like a natural tornado type of swirl, but a more crisp, clean, detailed swirl. And I remember having two or three thoughts before I blacked out and ended up almost like a half a block somewhere else. And I'll
Hmm.
and I'll describe where that somewhere else was in a minute. But the few thoughts that ran through my head was, is that cloud starting to swirl? And then the next thought, because it started to become more prominent, and it became a little bit faster. So my next thought was, yeah, it is starting to swirl. And then my last thought that I had was, oh my God, it's swirling fast. Like, yeah, so it started off real slow, and it kind of went to a medium pace. And then before you know it, that was it. I blacked out. And this is the most confusing part of my experience. because I mean, for years I didn't even talk about the vortex and the clouds. I just directly went straight to the UFO. Um, so that's what happened. Was my next conscious moment after blacking out, I'm like a half a block away, and it took me a long time to really be brave enough to be honest with myself. And I was literally like a half a block away. My next conscious moment, my arms are to my side like a soldier. I'm standing looking straight up at the belly of a I know what I was looking at. I was looking at the belly of a flying saucer. It wasn't like way up there above the mountaintops. I mean, it was literally up close and personal. And I I now I know that they probably had a little control over my movements, that sleep paralysis or whatever. But at the time, as a 12-year-old, I was just thinking that I chalked it up to eh, I just didn't want to miss a moment of it. You know what I mean? I might have had like that feeling in your body when you're cold and you're kind of managing yourself. You know,
Hmm.
you're kind of cold, but you're not freezing cold. You just know that, your core is like got this electrical feeling to it, like you're trying to keep yourself thermally warm. But that's what it kind of reminded me of. But I didn't think much of it. I mean, I knew that they probably had control over me because I had a bunch of thoughts that ran through my head that they already knew me. They knew who I was. There was no mystery about me. I wasn't frightened. I wasn't a threat to them. All that became very clear. But when I became conscious and I had my arms to my side and I was looking straight up at the belly of this craft, I'm I watched this blue light sporadically flash on the bottom of the belly of this craft. And as this blue light would flash, it would illuminate some of the actual physical belly of this craft. And to me, it looked like a lot of integral wires and tubing. Um,
So it
I like
didn't
to
look like the normal, just smooth shell. It looked
Right.
more
The parts that
industrial.
the were illuminated were not giving me that look. The look that I got to see was more like C3PO's belly, his stomach,
Hmm.
or uh I'll use Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When that craft came down, you know how integral and electrical it kind of looked. That's the little parts that were illuminating from the light that was flashing. So I remember thinking to myself, because I already knew it was what I was witnessing. I knew I was witnessing high advanced UFO technology. I heard of these things before. I knew that I was experiencing this. But to me, the light, it just threw me off balance. It didn't seem like it was in any particular pattern. To me, it looked like the craft was actually having some kind of electrical issue. So I remember thinking that thought ran through my head. I remember thinking that this is advanced technology. Why does it seem to be having some kind of electrical problem? And as soon as I thought that, it snapped out of whatever electrical problem I thought it was in, and it began to put an all out multicolored light show. Every color that I could imagine. I just remember thinking it was all the colors. I don't know if it was just everything within our spectrum and others, but I just remember thinking, wow, that's every color that I can imagine. And this time, throughout the whole belly of the craft, it was putting on a balanced, coordinated, um, symmetrical at times, um, light show. And it did kind of begin a little slow, and it started slowly getting faster and faster, and then it got really, really, really fast. Kind of like remember that old Simon Says game
Hmm.
where you just try to match the colors. Boop, 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 boop. Well, that's what it reminded me of. It was like a Simon Says game on crack or something. And so eventually, I mean, probably a minute and a half is all that went by. And eventually it stopped doing the multicolored light show thing, and then it hovered like back a little bit to where I can now see the ship more as a whole. and it was indeed a saucer shaped craft like they described. There was nothing uh different, that, there was no like Jetsons little glass bubble on the top, it was just just a real streamlined saucer disc craft. So I'm looking at it from a little bit of a far off distance because it smoothly and quietly went ahead of us a little bit. And then that thing took off east towards the Hayward Hills so fast, Jared. Um, the speed really, really shocked me. It really blew me away how fast it moved. If I would have blinked my eye, I would have thought that maybe it had just disappeared,
Hmm.
and I wouldn't have known what direction it went. But I seen what direction it went. It didn't disappear. It just left so fast and so quiet. It really reminded me of like a cartoon or something. I just wanted to kind of giggle. I just forget everything that I had just experienced up until that point of witnessing the speed of which this craft used to leave. Really, really shocked me. So then I noticed I could move. So I went to look to my left to see, because that was the last place where my friend Chano was. Let's don't forget about my friend Chano. And sure enough, Chano's there to my left. And the first thing I say is, "That was a UFO, huh?" And Chano goes, "Yeah." It was like he wasn't impressed by it at all. So for
Do you
me,
think
it
that
was
maybe he's seen him multiple times, and or do you think
I
it was
I
just
went through all those thoughts too, Jared. I've gone through many, many thoughts, and I'll tell you what I think happened. Um, but it was a shock to me, not only experiencing what I experienced, and then to be shocked at the speed of which the craft left, but to have a reaction from my friend that's just so nonchalant. I mean, I could tell immediately, Jarrett, that he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about that. And now that I'm older and I reflect on that, on these moments, I realize that that's a very common trend. There's a lot of long, quiet ride homes after these experiences. It doesn't
yeah?
matter if you're with two, three, four other people. But yeah, I was really shocked that he didn't really care much to discuss it. And as a kid, you don't know the right questions to ask. I really wish I would have asked him the right questions. The
Are you still friends with him? Are you guys still in touch?
So no, we're not in touch. But I do know he does live in the same town that I'm in. I'm in the Bay Area, in San Leandro, and I know from what I've heard, he's not too far away.
You should
But
maybe
but
reach
I got
out, and it could be also a parental thing. Like maybe your parents were more open to the children coming up and you know talking to them on whatever level the child brings, which fostered in you a different imagination, and maybe his parents wanted him to. I'm not trying to denigrate his parents, but maybe they didn't foster that same
yeah.
outwardness on that. I mean, it could be anything.
Hey, look, I was pretty much a class clown, and that didn't really work for me. Trying to share my experience here.
Oh, I'm sure.
Shauna was more of a serious guy. He was more into sports, and I know his family was really religious. So, yeah,
Mm.
I did. That thought also ran through my mind. Um, a thought that recently came up was maybe it had nothing to do with him. That was just for me. So who's to say all he experienced was maybe the ship taking off?
Or
Because he does acknowledge the experience, but as far as the vortex is concerned, the missing time that it took me a long time to realize the possibility of it was more than just a UFO sighting. It was an abduction. And there's all the dreams that followed this experience. I called dreams for many, many years, and just up until about 2 years ago, I finally became brave enough to call them what they truly are, and what I believe what these dreams were visions, and
mm,
some of them were actually memories that were naturally resurfaced. without going under regressive hypnosis, which I haven't done yet. I do plan on doing that, but yeah, I always said that that was my first initial point of contact. But from what I've learned, Jared, is by creating an experiencers group and talking to other fellow experiencers, I learned of screen memories. And I was talking to one of my friends named Neil Bowman, and he said, "So, Michael, do you have any other paranormal experiences that had happened to you besides this, this dramatic one?" And I go, "Yeah, I don't really like to talk about them because I felt like it discredited my UFO experience,
Mm.
And he said, "Well, let me hear it." So I told him, I said, "Okay, well, 2 years before the UFO experience, I remember waking up in the middle of the night, same town, different place. And I looked to the floor of my bedroom, and there's a 1950s, 1960s waitress, about 4 foot tall. She's got a plate of food. Someone's order's ready. She's walking directly towards me. She's actually in a diner. There's customers. This is not a dream. This is me, lucid, wide awake. Um, this waitress is walking towards me, and I can see her, and I can hear the customers mumbling. It's a busy diner. There's customers sitting on both sides of her as she's walking down the middle aisle towards me. I can hear the silverware hitting the plates, just like you would walking into, any old school diner. And as a 10-year-old boy, I could recognize what she was wearing was not of this time. It was what I felt was 1950s, 1960s. These waitresses don't dress all dolled up like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't looking at me. She was more like looking through me. I remember thinking if she would have looked at me, I really would have flipped out. And let me describe the media in which my eyes see this. Everything was in static. Everything was in old school TV snow, static. Um, Very detailed, but I could see what everything that she was wearing. I could see her face, but it was static. It was all static. So I remember calling down the short hallway to my mom. I asked her. I said, "Mom, can I come sleep with you?" And I heard her voice say, "Sure, honey, come on." And then I remember realizing, well, then my next step is I'm going to have to, step on the ground here, which kind of freaked me out. I go, so this was the last thing that I had said before I blacked out was, "But I'm afraid I'm going to step on this lady." And I don't remember what happened after that. And that's what really blows me away about that experience. Uh, is is I don't remember waking up the next day going, "Hey, mom, what happened last night? Do you remember?" I don't remember talking about it until years down the road. But like my experiencer friend Neil Bowman had suggested, he goes, "Now, Michael, why do you think that waitress appeared to you around 4 feet tall?" And Jared, man, my whole body lit up in goosebumps, man, because I had not ever really thought about that as a screen memory. These beings can appear to you in many ways, especially to children. They to not frighten you to the point of where they can't get their job done. I don't know, but some people see cartoon characters. Some people see giant bunny rabbits. In my case, it was a 1950s, 1960s male kiss my grits waitress, and
So
that really. Mhm.
you think it appeared to you as 4 foot tall just so that it didn't seem imposing and much bigger than you? So it was kind of on the
Well,
same height,
the
maybe?
the whole 4 foot, gray beings are depicted about that size. So, I mean, that's a possibility that the true being that was actually there was either not there, and it was just more of like a hologram, or they were masked behind whatever they were, whatever my mind was making up out of it. I don't know if I created the waitress, or they created a waitress for some reason. I don't know. I mean, I tried to think about it, like, why a waitress, I mean, I do love food, and I do
Yeah.
get really happy and stuff about food. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Um,
Mm.
but it really made me think about it, because up until that point, I had just chalked it up to maybe it was a ghost, maybe a waitress had lived in that house before, maybe I was just witnessing some residual energy. And I'm always afraid that, etch it in stone and say this is what it is, because I feel like that kind of blocks you. So I just leave it on the table and ponder the idea of it was a possible screen memory, something where they had been taking me, but 2 years before, maybe even earlier than that. I don't know. Um, but the dreams that I was having, I really felt as a 12-year-old boy really had no business of dreaming of. And now as a 49-year-old adult, I reflect on these dreams, which I call visions, and natural memories that were resurfacing from the experience, because I'm missing some time there. There was a point where I see the vortex in the clouds, and then I black out, and then I'm a half a block away. There was no memory of making this travel. And I don't even think my conversations with Chano ever got that deep. I think these conversations only consisted of me bragging to my friends about this experience, them not believing me bringing them the Chano, so that they'll listen to Chano. They're like, okay, well, I'll stick around and listen to what Chano has to say. Chano would say, yeah, you're still talking about this, Mike? And I'm like, yeah, I'm still talking about this. I'm going to be talking about this the rest of my life. But I still don't understand why he never thought it was a big deal.
Mm.
But maybe it wasn't even for him. Like I said, maybe his experience, I was selfish with this experience. I just assumed he experienced everything I did. Um, the
That's
vortex really confused me, though, for so long. And because you hear about UFOs, you never hear about a vortex in the clouds, and until much later, I learned that other experiencers have seen a swirling, a vortex, a hypnotic type of, not necessarily in the clouds all the time, sometimes in their wall or their ceiling as they're being taken from their room at night. So that, there's a possibility there. There's a lot of commonalities that I find within other experiencers. The vortex is one of them. Screen memories is another one. The long quiet ride home is also another one.
mm. I
Um,
have I
it,
have lots of questions. I mean, okay, remind me again what time of day it was when you saw this.
so I had just gotten dark, and I figured it was summer. I had just graduated from elementary school, and we were looking forward to going into junior high. So I would assume that it was probably uh, mid January, late January, about as soon as the sun started going down, maybe around 7, 8.
Okay, okay. So it's dusk now. The swirl. I wonder if that would have to do with the propulsion systems of the craft. Maybe
So
the maybe the propulsion systems send out a wave that causes the clouds to swirl.
well, it was like a hypnotic swirl, which initially it caught my attention. It captured my consciousness.
Well, could it be to draw your attention then to
Oh,
get you to focus?
absolutely.
So you
It
don't
got
so you don't think it had anything to do with the mechanics of the craft, but just to catch your attention.
well. It could have been them, just basically tuning in to me and
Mm.
my frequency, my vibration.
How far
Um,
away were the clouds that were swirling from you?
so, like I said, the clouds were pretty low. You know, you know what the clouds look like when they're pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's nothing that you could probably reach, you know, if you throw your etch a sketch at it or whatever. But they were low, and they were probably at the lowest point they could be, because I remember they appeared to be moving fast. And I understood that, you know, the reason why they were moving fast, and the reason, you know, was because they were so low. And I realized that the moon was out, and I'm sure the moon was brightening up these clouds. It was just a regular looking pretty night. I've always been a sky watcher. I've always appreciated the clouds. And the way it started spinning, though, it was just so crisp, quiet, and clean. uh, but yeah, it made me look into the whole hypnotic swirl, you know, and start studying that, what effects that has on our brain. And but it, you know, maybe it has nothing to do with the hypnotic swirl. Maybe it was, like I said, them tuning into me, my frequency. I had an experiencer ask me which direction it was twirling, and that was a great question, and I was able to answer it right away. It swirled to the right. So to him, he was suggesting that that swirl was indicating that it was taking in instead of shooting out, which makes sense because that was the initial part of the UFO experience. Um, one of the memories that had resurfaced was me actually physically being inside a vortex while I'm witnessing a UFO come in from the left. And that's the only quick memory I have of that. And I remember having that memory as a kid, and I totally dismissed it. I go, no, that's just my mind playing games. You know, I was not in the vortex when I seen the UFO. When I seen the UFO, I was, you know, a half a block away, standing like a soldier, looking straight up at the multicolored light show before it takes off like the speed of light. But
How high
as
up?
I
How high up was it when it was hovering above you?
I would say maybe no more than 75 to 150 feet, probably above the phone pole.
Mm.
It was definitely up close and personal. When I witnessed the multicolored light show that it put on for me, it took up my whole vision of the craft. You know, and it was big.
Mm.
And when the light show stopped, and it did take off a little bit ahead of us, I could tell that it wasn't this humongous giant ship. It was pretty average looking, you know, like 20 feet by 30 feet or 40 feet. You know, it's hard to tell,
Mm.
but yeah,
So it wasn't the big mothership off of uh, Independence Day. It was more of a nominal size that you would.
probably, yeah.
Okay.
But you know, at one point, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You know, at one point it seemed like a mothership because it was definitely up close and personal and in
Mm.
my face, you know, as it was putting on the light show.
Man, and I'd love to talk to your friend. Like
Hmm.
when you blacked out for that time and moved, and walked away from where when you first saw it. I would like to ask him, were you walking? Does he have a memory of you
Yeah,
walking there, or does he have a blackout as well? And also, if his family's super religious, he might incur a lot of spiritual stuff into that, like think it's a demon or something that
demon.
that
Right,
that scares him,
right,
religiously. So that may be, um, here in Utah we have Navajos and such, and they don't like to talk about skinwalkers and
right.
things like that, because that
It brings it on. Yeah,
it brings it on, or just talking about demons. And maybe he's got that same mindset with that. But it would sure be neat for you to, even just for personal account, to find out, were you walking? What does what
right.
did he see that matches or varies from yours? Do they come with a personal experience for everyone who sees them? Like,
Right.
do they control a whole area and each person gets a personal experience?
Right.
Um, and then I would wonder if maybe, so let's say if he has no recollection of you walking there or him, maybe they took you up in for the old scary movie probing action.
Right. The okey doke.
Yeah. And that's the so many questions. I myself, I don't think I've ever seen a UFO, at least not in any status where I'm like, there's no way that could be anything that I know. I've seen lights in the sky and stuff. Um, we're close to Air Force test range, so you see the floating flares, the flare lines. When you first see those, everyone jumps out of their boots like, what is that? That's amazing. Then you come to find out it's just flare markers being dropped, just parachute flares. But there, I can't think of anything I've seen that screams out to me, this is otherworldly. You know,
Yeah. Well,
well, when
it
you stand
definitely,
under it and look up at it, you
yeah.
know, I mean, even without the light show or any of that, anything that can hover above you and, I mean, you would know if it was a helicopter. They're so loud, you know.
Oh yeah.
How loud was it? Did it
It didn't make no
did
noise.
no noise and it looked like it had electrical issues?
Yeah, that's what I thought it looked like it had because I don't know, to me everything, I'm a Libra, everything's got to be symmetrical, kind of balanced. And the initial light that I seen that was flashing wasn't balanced, wasn't symmetrical. It was just kind of sloppy
Okay, so what you're telling me is you went anal on the UFO.
more than once.
Okay,
As I tell you the story,
that's
if
that's the
yeah,
precedent. Yeah, I went inside and
yep,
their dissecting table wasn't perfectly symmetrical with the room.
exactly,
Bugged the crap out.
exactly.
The when they brought the probe in, I
It's like you already know, Jared. That is so funny because the reoccurring dreams that I was having soon after, these are not the visions. These are actually what I believe are memories naturally surfacing. So there was a dream that I had two, maybe three nights in a row. I don't remember how many it was. I just remember finally realizing within this dream, hey, Mike, you keep dreaming of the same place, the same long, white, curvy hallway with the doors to the right. And so finally I became lucid enough within my dream to kind of debunk it or do a little test for myself. So I said, look, I keep ending up in the same spot right here. I think I know where I'm at. Let me prove it to myself by opening up this door right here. And I know what I'm going to see. And sure enough, I'd open up the door and I'm entering into a room that I had no idea was, it was just this humongous room behind a normal looking door. And it really looked like an amphitheater setting. And I went walking over to the stage area, which I thought was a stage. It looked like a stage to me. I was on the stage. I felt like I was being guided, but there was nobody with me. I was alone. I'm on the stage overlooking what I thought should be the amphitheater type seating arrangement, like you and I going to a baseball game would experience, just very common seating. And it did look like seating, but it was all black. It was very abstract. It looked like melted obsidian, is what I describe it looking like. It didn't look very comfortable to sit on. Everything's white and bright and clean, except for the seating that I'm looking at. It's black, it's kind of melted looking. And then there was a room within that room that was a little bit smaller, and you walk into it, and I called it the black hot tub room because there was this big looking hot tub in there. It reminded me of one of them old fiberglass hot tubs that have all the shapes and contours in them for your legs and your butt and
Like
your
the old,
arms and all that.
yeah, the old bullfrog
But it was
spa.
much taller, much bigger, and it was dusty, which shocked me. It was really dusty. And
So
and I look at the water. Uh-huh.
they apparently didn't know you well enough to know they better clean up before you come.
Well, I mean, if they're so advanced technology wise, I mean, don't they have a house cleaner? I mean, I don't know. I don't get it.
The Jetsons nurse or nanny
Yeah,
robot or
Judith,
whatever.
or yeah, yeah. So I took note of the water that was inside this hot tub, and it was standing water. It was stagnant. It didn't look very refreshing. It was uncirculated. Um, and there was like a little cutout in the back. It looked like another little tiny, like if you were to get in line for lunch uh, at school or something like that. It looked kind of like an institutionalized type of, all right, come get your meal or get in line, and something comes out of the wall here and something goes in the wall there. But other than that, it was just a clean, white, bright room with it was this hot tub was black. It also looked like it was shaped and molded just like the seating area of the amphitheater room, which looked like melted obsidian. But yeah, I took note that the water was ugly, dirty, unrefreshing, uncirculated, stagnant water. It was dusty. The hot tub itself was very dusty, and that was it for that dream. But it
Maybe
stuck with me for years. Like it has to be something more to that dream. I believe that it was a natural memory.
maybe the aliens evolved from like a betta fish where they're designed to live in gross, and so that's like that's where they go to shower. They shower in muck, and they seed on obsidian because you know they evolved different.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I man, how many times do you reckon you've had these kind of what do you call them? Screen dreams,
The screen memories.
screen memories.
I bet you a lot of people are unaware of them actually probably experiencing some of the same stuff I have, and because there's so many things that we just chalk up to, oh, that was this, or that was that, and you have no idea that there's a puzzle there that could be put together, and it could be much more than that. I bet a lot more people have been taken than we realize. I don't think it's a very it's like I'm a very special person for that to happen. It happens to probably 3 or 4 times double the amount or triple the amount of people that actually admit it.
Mm, mm. Yeah, or even know.
Yeah,
They
some
may not
people
even
have
know that that's what's
zero
happening.
idea. you know
Um,
and Go ahead, Jared.
oh no, go on.
It unfortunately it takes something dramatic in someone's life, to kind of reach a certain awakening, so to speak. Usually it's a near death experience, or in my case, it's everything. I've had some near death experiences. I've had the rough childhood. um, I've been abused. I've been in foster homes. I've lived with, parents and family that, addictions, and, my mom was a bartender my whole life. And that seems to be a common thread within experiencers is trauma. It's a traumatic, bringing up. We lived all over the place. Whoever would basically take us in. And I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's because, we can handle that kind of stuff, but experiencers they experience everything. It's not just experiencing ghosts or experiencing UFOs, or it's everything. I think they all share a real common thread. They share a common it's very close to each other. It's just a
Mm.
matter of science. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And until we figure it out, it just appears silly, or we're programmed to think it's demonic, or it's this, or it's that. You know, my experience, it became more and more angelic as my visions continued. I had a vision of the wheel within the wheel, which I had no idea what that is. And a lot of people today listening, Jarrett, probably haven't heard of the wheel within the wheel.
That's from the book of Daniel, isn't it?
Oh, well,
Ezekiel?
it's spoke of, yeah, the Book of Enoch. It's
Or
an experience that Ezekiel, he was a priest, he was a prophet. They speak of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Um, so the wheel within the wheel is part of the hierarchy. We have a ranking system structure within the angelic realm, which I'm not religious at all. This is just things that I felt that I needed to dive into because there was something to it. This wheel within the wheel is considered an angel. It's like the third highest ranking angel, just under seraphim and cherubim. Then you have the throne angel, which they call many different names. In Hebrew, it's called Ophanim, which means wheels. Uh, it, they're called throne angels. They're called the wheel within the wheel. More people are familiar with that through Ezekiel's vision of God that he had.
yeah, didn't
Um,
didn't God or didn't he travel to heaven on a wheel with, or the angels came, something came down a wheel within a
right.
wheel, and he traveled up to heaven with them, or traveled somewhere with them. It's been a spell since I've read it.
Yeah, I think it was a relative of uh, the whole flood with a relative of
Well, for Noah,
Noah. Yeah,
you've
uh,
got Enoch and then
right.
Methuselah.
Enoch was taken up, and then he became Metatron from the studies that I gathered.
Yeah, you have Enoch, Methuselah, and then Noah. That's his grandfather, father, and then him.
So this wheel within the wheel, like you said, they called it the spirit's chariot also, which sounds a lot like Merkabah, um,
Mm-hmm.
the activation of our chakras. It reminds me of spirit orbs. Spirit orbs may very well be little activated Merkabahs. When we pass away, we may very well go back to this spiritual vehicle that we see as orbs.
Mm.
Um, is the possibilities are there. But yeah, as a 12-year-old boy, I remember seeing the wheel within the wheel spinning and hovering above my old childhood home. It was about 20 feet off of the roof, and one wheel was facing me, coming my way. There was another wheel going the sideways, the opposite, another way. And it was kind of dark. It looked like a little bit like maybe gunmetal. Um, I didn't remember seeing eyes on it. A lot of people depict seeing it covered with eyes. Um, it could have very well had eyes. I didn't see them myself, but I really thought that there had to be something to it. But as I was having this vision, I wasn't impressed with the wheel within the wheel at all, within the vision, because I just recently had a UFO experience, not too long ago. And that was exciting. I know what a UFO looks like. It hovers
Mm-hmm.
above you, multicolored light show, and it takes off like the speed of light. This thing was just floating, couple wheels within, one within the other. It didn't impress me much, but I remember saying, well, let me see if anyone else finds it fascinating. So I went over to my neighbor that was mowing his lawn. He couldn't hear me. He couldn't see me. He couldn't feel me. A couple of friends outside playing. They can't see me. I'm trying to point up to the wheel within the wheel. They're ignoring me. They don't see me as if I'm not even there. So I just remember going through the frustrations of that vision. Like no one's listening to me. No one can see me. No one can hear me. Um, and I just left it alone for many, many, many years. Only told a few people about it. Didn't make sense to me. Still didn't make sense to me. I would just stick to the UFO story. I wouldn't talk about anything else but the UFO. Um, and then I started having dreams of running from crashing floods, jumping up on Stonehenge for safety, um, walking on a beautiful beach with my Aunt Cindy holding her hand, with a bunch of beached whales just from as far as the eye could see, just
Mm.
beached whales, just all dead, laying on the beach. Just really disturbing, sometimes beautiful uh, dreams that I really felt, a 12-year-old had really no business, having, unless there was actually something to it. And, sure, there was a movie or a television show that would trigger me every once in a while. I remember the movie, Contact with Jodie Foster. That sort of triggered me because there is a device in that movie that looks exactly like a wheel within the wheel, that, she used to actually, travel in, or to, as a Stargate to go back and speak with her father that had passed away. Um, but I did have, catch an episode of Ancient Aliens one night, and it was the first time that I heard about Ezekiel's vision of God, and how between ufology and religion, you've got this argumentative thing there that's going on, and here I am with an experience that has this contrast. It has this contrast of a UFO, and then it has this contrast of spirituality also. It's like, who's giving me what? What's the message
Mm.
here? You know, um, Step back and not freak out about everything. Just get back to the simplicity of it. What's the message? And the only thing, Jarrett, that I've been able to grasp out of it is maybe the message here, in my case, maybe in my duty, in my light working, is to mesh the two together. If you think about it, if you and I, if you or I lived, in the ancient times, or hundreds and thousands and millions of years ago, or whatever, and something came from the sky like that, you would want to line yourself up with that person.
Oh,
Obviously this being or these people, have got it figured out. I would basically almost feel like it would be a sign of worshiping them, to
yeah.
try to align myself up with these people that looks like they've got it figured out. It's not magic. It's a matter of science. you
Well,
know
look at the airplane cults we have around the world today. Certain tribes that have never seen an airplane worship airplanes,
yes.
worship the Queen of England, or Prince Chuck, because he came to visit them on an airplane and brought them,
Wow.
gifts. So they call them cargo cults
Yep.
because it's kicked off, mainly in World War II. These remote areas, war gets brought close to them, so we want to use some of their land. We buy off their chief with some goods, and to this day, these places, they build altars or shrines that look like airplanes. Looks like a
Right.
spruce goose altar. I want to go back to the beginning. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but so we go back to when that UFO, you had just got done being kind of blacked out and moving.
Yep.
And the UFO, you said it appeared like it had an electrical issue at first, like
Right.
its lights were firing. What if maybe, and I'm just going to throw some spitballs in the dark here.
You're right. I already know where you're going with it. Go
Well,
ahead.
what if that's the light show hypnotizes you, and maybe implants or supplants memory. But what if you and your buddy both got nabbed? And what if they decided to hypnotize him first for whatever reason, like you can only focus in on one person. It has to kind of attune to them. And what if it did have an electrical issue when it started it on you, and then it went straight. So they figured, oh, okay, that wasn't a big problem. But that's why you see through the fog when he doesn't.
That's very interesting. Um,
Because what if it did have an electrical issue? So his memory is blanked out, and maybe he remembers he remembers something totally different than you, because they were their equipment hadn't failed on him. But when they kicked in on you or halfway through your light show procedure,
I seen
it
through the
had a
fog. Yeah.
it had a hiccup, which
Yeah.
allowed you to have a glimpse of whatever part they
Right.
didn't overwrite.
Yeah. Another little fraction of a little deficiency that I seem to always, and I think they joke about it. I don't know. I have a feeling they have a sense of humor too, but
God, I hope so.
yeah.
I
I
hope
also
so. If not, I can't understand why the probing happens. That's
I had an experiencer friend suggest to me that the blue light that was sporadically flashing when I had come to was actually probably had something to do with me coming back into my own consciousness, uh, going somewhere around the lines of a lot of people have studied where consciousness starts, and it's in the micro, it's in the macro, it starts at a very small part of within our brain, and a lot of people connect the blue light with consciousness.
mm,
So it was suggested to me that maybe it was just part of the whole, me bouncing back into my own consciousness, and I just assumed it was them having the problem, and they were probably thinking, "Oh no, son, here, let me show you. We ain't the ones that have the problem. Let me just, let me show off and show you this multicolored light show that would just blow your mind for the rest of your life," which they did.
mm-hmm.
It has blown my mind. Um, and a lot of people will go, well, what do you think about the colors? What do you think about all the lights? Why do you think there was so many lights and sequences? And why do you think it went faster and faster? And people speak of things like downloads and things like that. And so I started studying lights and what different colors do to our brain and things like that. And then I came across some information about, well, the best way to transfer information into a biological being, the most efficient way would be light.
Well, it is.
And
It's right now the most efficient way is through YouTube, which is light and sound. So it is. But what if that failing electrical part was when the hypnotic guy swings the clock back and forth like a pendulum to put you under? And what
right,
if the light show was the download, but they hadn't got you under because, you know, light 34A went out, and they've got an old drunk mechanic from wherever who tied one on the night before, and he wasn't
yeah,
quite up to snuff, or he was lazy, or he was flirting with the communications alien. And so he's like, yeah, sure, I fixed it. It's okay. And he really didn't. So you didn't get put under, but your friend did.
yeah. And it's like, what information did I get from this download? And you think, there's, I don't recall any information. Well, Art, I'm sure you're aware just as well as I am that our subconscious is way more powerful than what we are experiencing now, communicating
Mm-hmm.
with each other now. Man, maybe it's locked into our subconscious. Maybe our subconscious knows exactly what to do with it. Maybe it's something that's needed for the future.
Maybe
You
the
know,
information was just for you to say, yeah, I saw a UFO, like your
yeah,
buddy did.
yeah. I
Maybe it
felt like
was,
they were showing off. To me,
it,
it felt like showing off,
it could
especially after
be,
a thought of, "Are you having an issue?"
yeah.
It felt like a show off. Like, no, there's no issue. But that's cute of you to think that.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple other things I wonder. So on these alien aircraft, would all of the Zetas be uniform, or would they have separate personalities? And would some of them maybe be, maybe a little below average in their, because let's face it, if we went to outer space and met aliens on a flying saucer, we'd have one or two guys that were dipshits and probably screwed up every once in a while.
Oh
Captain
yeah,
had
there's
to.
always somebody that ruins it for everybody else.
Do you think
That doesn't
the
stop here.
yeah? Do the aliens have the same thing? And do they have the guy who shirks his duties or
Yeah.
only
Someone
does
gets
half the job?
corrupted or yeah.
That's the question.
So look, hey, when I finally brought it up to my wife, that I felt like that it was more than just a sighting. I think it was more an abduction. That didn't go over very well at all. And I've been married with my wife for like 25 years. I've been with her for over 30 years.
Mm,
She knew what she was getting into. She knew that I was somebody that had experienced a UFO, but I don't know how, you know, I could tell that it was something that I couldn't get into too much detail with her. It wasn't something that she was very passionate about. And I was very passionate about it. So for me to suggest, a couple of years ago was the first time with that. I sat here in bed with her and I suggested that, from what I've gathered and from what I've learned, I go, the chances are more than likely they took me. It wasn't just a random flyby, like, hey, look,
mm.
there's a couple of kids, let's go mess with them. Like this was calculated. And the look in her eye, Jared, really broke my heart because I could tell that she really didn't believe me. And, she really felt that I had plenty of time to make something like this up in my head. And so what I ended up doing was I really started praying that if it's in the cards, I really prayed that she would have an experience with me one of these times. And nothing happened for such a long time except for just orbs. I was experiencing orbs in the sky being monitored. I captured some of them on camera. I even captured black spears. I have that on camera. Um, but yeah, nothing that dramatic, as a kid. But finally, July 21st of this year, me and my wife were out front having a smoke break out in front of our apartments. And sure enough, an object came from the right side before it was getting dark. And I didn't want to embarrass myself initially by, making a big deal out of it in front of my wife. I always try to downplay it. So I said, well, what kind of drone is that? Because some of our neighbors have drones and they can throw you off for a second or two, but it becomes very obvious, apparent that they are indeed just drones. They've got the very basic up, down, left, right, green, red. They don't go too far and they end up going back to the owner. And so that's what I said. I go, what kind of drone is this? It kind of like the nose of it reminded me of like the space shuttle coming back in. It had a weird like amberish glow to it. And as it was coming overhead, I couldn't tell if it was flipping, rolling. I mean, I even had a thought that it was shape shifting or something. I just couldn't get a solid, good two eyes on it. I just kept feeling like it was doing a corkscrew. To me, it looked like a saucer doing corkscrews, shape shifting into different shapes. Pulling out my phone and taking a video of it was an afterthought. Um, it was just like getting the license plate of the car that almost hit me.
It's okay.
You
You're
know,
a guy. We never
I
catch
do
enough on our phones. We hear about it all the time. It's
I do have some some of it on my phone, but it's just like any other light that, hey Billy, I think I see this light up in the skies. It's just any other light that someone would share on YouTube. But to me, I just wanted to kind of get the license plate of what I just experienced, because when it was directly overhead, I seen light patterns. I
Mhm.
seen white, very bright white dots, and then it was three rows of four dots, and each line of four dots ended with a line. So it was like dot 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 line, dot 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 line, dot 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 line.
Kind of like Morse code, handwritten out.
You are something else. Yeah, you really do blow me away, Jarrett. So what I did with that information was, once again, I asked myself, what's the message here? Stop freaking out about what it could be, another Ophanum, another throne angel, another wheel within the wheel. What's the message here? What would be the most basic way to communicate with old dumb Mike down here? And that would be Morse code. I look into Morse code, and that exact. I'm not saying that this is something I'm gonna edge into stone, but yeah, it's not letters in Morse code. It's actually, with the information that I got from them, it's numbers, and it's 444. That's what I got from the Morse code. So it's just, you're right on the same
Mm,
line of thinking on a lot of the stuff that I went through, Jared.
mm.
Yeah.
I wonder what that could mean. 444.
Well, you look that up and it's going to tell you it's an angelic number. Yeah,
You could,
the
oh,
angels are watching you, they're protecting you and all that drag. I don't know.
you could find that.
Maybe I'll find out. But my wife was with me. She actually got to witness it with me. It was a
Okay, so yeah,
blessing.
back to that. Now, how's your wife treat the?
So she's not going to run out and go join my UFO Paranormal California group or anything like that. She's not going to go become a ufologist, but it's something we can actually sit down and talk about, because damn sure when I got back into the apartment, I drew exactly what I seen, and I shared it on the experiencers meet group that I was in at the time. I shared it in my group, and my wife looks at the paper that I'm drawing, and she circles three of the dots out of the four that I had, and she goes, "That's what I seen." And she also told me that it reminded her of Saturn, which I remember her saying that outside, but I didn't really understand until we were talking about it back in the apartment. And I go, "Well, what do you mean Saturn?" And she goes, "Well, it just reminded me of Saturn. You had, like, there was a ring on the outside,
Mm.
and then there was like something going on the inside." And I go, "You mean like a wheel within a wheel?" And she said, "Well, yeah, kind of. I
Oh
don't know what kind
man.
of range this drone would have to totally come from as far as I could see to the right to as far as I could see to the left, but it is a beginning. It is something that we can talk about. She seems to be a little bit more open about it, and it's a blessing for me because it's such a huge passion. And
That, and
it would.
also it makes it so that you can share these
Yep.
scary or enticing moments with your spouse. You know.
Yep. And I can have these interviews with people like you, and
Mm-hmm.
and not be so damn embarrassed anymore, and go lock myself in the garage, or go outside and have these interviews on my phone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then feel like I physically change when I get into the house. Like I feel like I can't speak the way I normally want to speak about these things. And now she knows, nothing surprises her,
Do you
it's.
think? Here's a question that I'm wondering with the current tempo of everything. Do you think that UFO experiences have gotten more frequent lately, or do you think they've always been at this level and maybe the internet just allows it to be known about more?
I think a little bit of both. I think they've always been coming down. For some reason, July seems to be a hot month. Um, and just like everything, yin yang, there's ups and downs. I'm sure they come down when they're concerned with what we're doing. Some species may. Like the kids have found the matches in the backyard again. Like, oh, all right, I'll go back there and keep an eye on them for a while. So they have to up the ante. It depends on what's going on here. Is war pending?
Oh, they better get their butts to Ukraine then. Stop this World War III that seems to try to be brewing lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've had you on for over an hour now. I want to thank you for coming on. I like the story. I think that's impressive. I'm really intrigued to know um, what your buddy saw. Like that moment you lost time. Does he
Yeah.
remember that time? Because that
Right.
might, if he has a recollection of you guys walking, that could change the tempo into a
Everything.
whole bunch of things. And if he has
Absolutely.
no recollection, that changes it again. I mean, like,
Hmm.
what if they, I don't know. What if they just
The
snatch
story's
up your
not
conscious,
right.
and
That's all they
play with
needed,
that?
and they have the ability to manipulate time. Like that's not even a thing to them.
Mm,
To us, it's like this whole, woo, time travel. To them, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. They've got it figured out. Anything with close to these ships could be affected in as many ways as they want. You
mm,
know. Um, yeah, when I got embarrassed about bringing it up to Chano, finally I just left him alone, and he kind of fell out of my life. But the story's not over. Maybe one day I will have another conversation with him, and I will ask him the right questions, and I will ask him about the vortex in the sky, and where we were standing, when we were both directly underneath that flying saucer. I'm very interested, and I won't be so embarrassed anymore because I'll actually have some real questions, and just not having a group of friends behind me
mhm.
that I'm trying to impress. You know what I mean? I'm trying to convince.
And also, you're
Um,
an adult now.
right.
You've
Yeah,
experienced some shit when you're a
yeah. I'm
kid.
I'm
Yeah,
almost 50 years old. I'm not trying to lie to kick it anymore.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's run through some comments real quick. Hi, Shawnette. Hi, King. Uh, King says, "Oh, very true on that." And I wish I'd have read that comment when it come through because I don't know exactly what point in time he said that, but he said it's been happening, and I think he's talking about uh,
The visitations.
visitations and the angelic association with them.
Yeah.
And then James says hi, um, and there's some commenters talking to each other on here, but nothing to do with the show. They're saying hi, but hello everyone. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
If you do get any further updates or any future sightings, please reach out, come back on and tell us about it. And it would be interesting to interview you and your wife to see if you guys perceive or actually even see something different. Because I still wonder if these things come through in a corporeal form
Hmm.
that is identical to everyone that witnesses it, or if maybe they have control over how they are perceived.
Yeah.
That's an
Very
interesting
well.
thought. All right, everyone. Mike Walker. If you want to look him up, I don't know. Is you okay if I
Yeah,
direct people?
absolutely.
Yeah, just go to the Wild Pod Mike Walker on the Facebook. He's on there. That's where he and I have been chatting and linking up. You can catch him there. It's a fairly safe-ish place. And everyone have a good night. And thanks again, Mike. This has been great.